Hi guys, I have some pretty big news. There won't be any new What If Altist videos for around the next 6 months. This is because I'm going to be walking the Appalachian Trail. For those of you that don't know, the Appalachian Trail is more than 2,000 miles of wilderness backwoods trail stretching between Maine and Georgia, along the Appalachian Mountains that are the spine of America's East Coast, to the west of big cities like Washington, D.C., New York, Philadelphia, or Boston, and I'm really excited to go. However, sadly, it means I won't be able to release any new videos because the trail has no cellular service or Wi-Fi, and so I can't really make any videos for very obvious reasons, and you guys can go back to doing whatever you do in the rest of your lives, which I'm assuming is listening to Sabaton and playing Europa Universalis 4, which I'm sure are the only things you do in your truly complex and vast lives. By the way, Sabaton's album Carolus Rex is probably the best music I have for hiking, so keep that in mind. It's important to be humble in situations like this, because the vast majority, or around 3/4 of the people that try to walk the whole Appalachian Trail, fail. And that's entirely reasonable. It involves living in a tent and eating beans for 6 months. But at the same time, it means my chances of success are not the highest. And honestly, guys, if I've gotten everything I want out of the experience, and I've gone as far as I can, and I have a toe freezing off, I'm just going to call it quits rather than insecurely trying to prove my masculinity to all of you. And if that's the case, then we all win. You get more videos, I get more money, and I get to keep my toe. As part of the trail, and for all time afterwards, I founded a Discord account for What If Altist, for fans to stay in contact with each other and to talk to me. I'll be in a town that has an internet connection or cellular service every 3 to 7 days, and so I'll be able to respond to any threads you want in that time, and I promise to respond to any factual question you have. And if I don't respond within a week, it's either because I'm dead, at which point a family member or friend will give a heartfelt last episode of What If Altist, your question was too dull for me to deign to respond, and finally, I'm on a quirky and romantic Indiana Jones-style adventure. The link to the Discord is written right in front of you, and if you don't feel like copying it out, there'll be another one inside the description. And there'll be guidelines and all that sort of thing once you get there, but in general, a pretty good guideline is just be a decent human being. It's not that difficult. Don't, cyberbully people. Don't immediately call genocide in other groups. I know that's really difficult for this part of the internet, but as a human race, we've been able to accomplish things when we've put our mind to them. We haven't had a major plague or war in the last 70 years. We've been able to put a man on the moon, so let's put our mind to this and be somewhat decent. But once this starts, we can have all sorts of interesting discussions. We can talk about alternate history. You guys can ask me any history questions you want. And besides that, I've got loads of interests. Hiking, of course, cooking, philosophy, demographics, science fiction, fantasy. I'm sure if you throw a dart at something, we can have an interesting debate or discussion about it. And so let's have some good times. Now that that bit of this episode is over, let's move on to the next bit, which is maps. If you were to call me a map nerd, that would be an understatement, and if you were to call this show map porn as a comedian, that would be an easy joke. And so, I thought I'd show you all guys some of the best maps that I've made that are non-alternate history related. The first segment will be handmade maps I've made, and then the next one will be quirky machine-made maps that I drew on Photoshop. I hope you enjoy this all. This is a hand-drawn watercolor map I made of the world in 1900. Its 3x2 panels are around 4x2 feet, and I used the Mercator projection, which I'm not entirely proud about, but it's the easiest projection to draw with, so it is what it is. The East Asia panels are different from the ones further west because my watercolors got thrown out part of the way through, and so I had to use slightly different watercolors. This is a map I made a few years back that's less technically good, but I still think carries a little bit of charm. Most of my family's from the British Isles, and so this map chronicles the migration across the Atlantic to America, and I made a three-dimensional look by gluing together pieces of paper and then cutting them out, and I made the mountains and highlands out of clay. This is a map I also made a few years back. that I designed for a board game about the rise of the Roman Empire. And it has 10 factions, and the different colored areas are the different political and cultural regions. I again made this one with watercolor, and the board game itself was super complicated and super long, probably as complex and long as the actual historical events described, and didn't turn out to be that fun, but I still like the map, but however it hasn't held up very well. So this is my first machine-made map, and this is a map of the dominant ancestral group in each region of America. And the reason I made this is because it's really hard to understand American ancestry because it's so mixed, and you get really inaccurate maps, and so I wanted to address this. And I need to keep this moving, but if you want to talk about this, I so want to answer your questions on this map. And so this will be on Discord along with the other maps. This is a cultural map of America rather than an ethnic one. Since a lot of the first immigrants to arrive assimilated into the pre-existing groups, this shows more of the cultural divisions. This is another topic that I have wasted far too many brain cells on, that I could have been using on something moderately useful. And so ask me more about this. I've taken a lot of influences from Colin Woodward's American Nations Theory and David Hackett Fisher's Albion Seed. This is a very meta map. It's a map of where every What If Altist episode has started. And by started, I mean where the first major effects are, rather than the point of departure. For example, in my timeline on What If Nuclear Bombs Never Existed, the timeline starts with Marie Curie being less inventive in Krakow, but the first main effects are in Japan, where Hiroshima and Nagasaki are never nuked. And along with all the other maps, you can get better resolution and detail on Discord, since I don't have time to zoom into all the separate areas of the map and catch all the details here. Wow, this map was a lot of effort. It took like a month out of my life. But it's a map of every language on Earth, and I showed the majority in each area, and I honestly think it's a much more honest view of the world than any political map you'd get, because you get the cultural realities that underpin the often artificial borders. This is going to start some internet bar fights. The countries in red are younger than the state of Virginia, which was founded in 1607. And before you all nag and complain, Britain was not a country in 1607. There was England and Scotland. Same with Italy and Germany, which were creations of the 19th century, and a united India did not exist in the 17th century either. And just to keep the internet bar fight going, I made a map that actually spells out how old individual countries on the Earth are. This is a map of the average age in each nation on Earth, which, once you look at it for 2 hours, you realize how much it explains about the world. So what is this map? A short answer is I took on a job that was way too big for me. This is a strategic map of the world, and as I've read history, I've basically realized certain areas are likely to get fought over, certain areas are of strategic importance, and certain areas tend to do better than others. And so I tried to map that with the different colors representing different climactic zones, the white lines representing different climactic regions, and the different boxes basically symbolizing the different strategic zones that share similar strategic priorities and oftentimes have similar cultures and terrains. This is an ethnic map of the world in which the brown symbolizes the areas that are not inhabited by the largest ethnic group in a nation, while any other color symbolizes the parts of individual nations that are inhabited by the largest ethnic group. And this is the same map but in 1910, and I chose the militarily dominant ethnic group rather than the largest one to symbolize how the 20th century has resulted in massive change. This is a map of the world demonstrating the areas in which the people who are currently living in those areas are not the descendants of the people who lived there 500 and 2,000 years ago respectively, to show where migrations has taken place. And finally, this is a map that, out of my attempts to have no romantic life whatsoever, I've designed a whole fantasy universe around. And this is a map of what a modern Anglo-America would look like with medieval technology. And the dark gray is the culturally barbarian areas, while every other color is urbanized societies. And this is a cultural map, meanwhile, demonstrating the certain developmental and cultural levels of each part of America. Thanks so much, guys, for supporting me in this passion project of mine. And please stay in contact on Discord, and I'm sure we'll have some amazing discussions on everything. I'll be back before you know it and putting out videos. On the other hand, all might be gone longer than it took the Allies to get from Paris to Berlin. And thanks so much, and have a great time.